This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Beginning the show is K-State's Sandy Johnson and Nicholas Diaz as they explain research they have been working on that looks into how acclimation impacts heifers' breeding success with artificial insemination. Jaymelynn, Farney, and Deepak Joshi continue the show as they discuss satellite and drone work, which they are working on, and how it could impact Kansas farmers and ranchers. K-State instructor and horticulture specialist Cynthia Domenghini ends the show saying planting radishes, spinach, turnips, mustard, lettuce, and other leafy greens from mid-August to early September could extend the harvest into fall. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show discussing the importance of acclimating animals for increased reproduction with K-State beef reproduction specialist Sandy Johnson and assistant professor in K-State's animal sciences and industry, Nicholas Diaz. Sandy, Nicholas, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Glad to be here.
Nicholas, how did this project begin?
This project was actually inspired, I guess, by some data that I collected during my grad studies. Back in the day, we were just trying to understand how the temperament of the heifer would influence her fertility to timed artificial insemination, and to also try to understand how the handling events of the protocol itself would influence on her temperament and conception rates of the protocol. So essentially what we did was we evaluated heifers for temperament in the first handling event of the protocol at Cedar Inn, and then classified heifers at either excitable temperament or calm temperament, and then just looked at their performance to the protocol. Essentially, we saw that excitable heifers have decreased conception rates to the protocol when compared to calm heifers. But for a subset of heifers, we collected blood to look at cortisol levels. Cortisol is often referred as a stress hormone. Usually you would see that more excitable animals have more circulating cortisol than calm animals do, which is what we saw. Excitable heifers had greater cortisol than calm heifers in all three handling events of the protocol. And when we look at the excitable heifers that fail to become pregnant to the protocol, we see that those heifers have greater cortisol concentrations at the day of time day I when compared to the excitable heifers that do become pregnant. And whenever you look at the profile of cortisol throughout the protocol, you see that concentrations of cortisol are greater at Cedar In than they are at Cedar Out, which in turn is greater than the day of time day I. So as you handle them, cortisol levels go down, kind of indicating that they get acclimated to being handled. So then our idea was, if great cortisol at the day of time day I is bad for fertility, and as you handle them, you decrease cortisol concentrations, what if we were to handle them more often? Can we further decrease cortisol concentrations by the day of time day I? And would that in turn increase conception rates of the protocol? So that was originally the idea. The little bit of an issue with that is that no producer will handle heifers just for the sake of acclimating only. So then what we thought about doing is, instead of handling heifers more often prior to the protocol, can we handle heifers more often during the handling events of the protocol, right? You're already bringing heifers in for the handling event of the protocol. Can we run them twice, essentially, each day to see if we can accomplish that?
And when you're running them through, is it just opening them up and letting them walk, or kind of politely pushing them through?
Essentially, what we did is we went to the farms kind of like 10 days-ish prior to the beginning of the protocol, and we evaluated them by what we call a reproductive tract score, which is just a way that by palpating the reproductive tract, we can tell how well developed that reproductive tract is, and therefore we can tell how pubertal that heifer is, essentially how ready for the breeding season that heifer is. So we evaluated them for reprotract score, we evaluated them for temperament, and then we balanced the treatments, right? Because we want those two things to be very well balanced between the heifers that we're going to treat and the heifers that are going to serve as control, so that we can compare apples to apples in the future. And then what we did is heifers that were going to be treated and acclimated, they received the purple ear tag, for example. And the ones that would serve as control, they received the red ear tag, and they all went to the same pasture together. So then every single handling event of the estrus synchronization protocol, we would bring everybody in, sort reds from purples, and then we would run purples through the handling facilities without catching anybody. And then after that, we would put the purples, commingle the purples back with the reds, and then bring everybody to the chute for the handling event of the protocol of the day. In a way that at the day of time day I, the treated heifers have had 6 trips to the chute, while the control heifers have had only 3.
What changes did you see when it came to reproduction then for those animals?
We saw about 10% more pregnancies for the ones that were acclimated versus the ones that served as control. And this increase in conception rates to the protocol was very consistent to all the locations that we did. So we did this, if I'm correct, in 5 to 6 locations between the breeding seasons of 23 and 24. So total, probably around 10 locations. I think that only for one location, both treatments tied, but for all the other ones, we had greater conception rates for acclimated heifers when compared to control. And at every single handling event of the protocol, we evaluated those heifers for temperament as well. And we see that everybody has better temperament measurements at the day of time day I when compared to the beginning. But the treated heifers, the acclimated heifers, it was of greater magnitude. They were less temperamental than the control heifers, if that makes sense. Everybody was less temperamental at the day of time day I when compared to C3N, but that was of greater magnitude for our treated heifers when compared to the control.
I would just add that when we ran these heifers through the chute, I think the biggest group might have been 75 head in one group. That may be overestimating. Anyway, but the longest time, which I don't think was even that largest group, was like 15 minutes. And so the step that we took was not that much of a time sink, in the course of our day. So people should understand that we got a nice response, just, letting those heifers run through the chute, doing nothing else but letting them run through the chute.
Absolutely, Cindy. I'm actually looking at the data right in front of me because we did time how long it took for us to do the acclimation protocol in those heifers. And we had anything from 30 to 62 head. The least it took us to do the acclimation procedure was 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The longest it took was 17 minutes and 20 seconds. And it took, on average, 17 seconds per head to do the acclimation protocol.
Has all this research been done on heifers?
Yes, we chose to do this on heifers because those are usually more temperamental, so it would be easier to catch a difference. I'm not saying this wouldn't work with cows. We haven't tested it. My gut tells me it probably would. But we just chose to do with heifers because those are usually more temperamental than cows are, and it would be easier to find a difference there.
Where is this research going forward?
So once we got done with this, Dr. Johnson and I sat together trying to figure out what to do next. And a little bit of our discussion was that, if simply by getting the heifers acquainted to the handling facilities, because that's essentially what you're doing, right? You're just training them and getting them acquainted to going through the handling facilities so that they understand that going through the handling facilities is not that bad kind of deal. If simply by getting them acquainted to the handling facilities was effective, what if we were to include a source of positive reinforcement, right? Originally, the idea was to have System A versus System B, where System A heifers go through, they go to a pen regularly, like you would in a farm, commercial farm. In System B, heifers would go to a different pen where they had access to shade, maybe something palatable for them to chew on, and maybe a brush for them to scratch themselves kind of deal so that they get a treat after they're done. The issue with that is that to do research in that scenario, you're no longer treating the animal, you're treating the pen. So then it becomes a little rough on the numbers and the power we have to make that analysis. So then our solution was to try to work with the Kansas Technology Institute to try to develop a brush that we could put inside of the alleyway of the chute so that the heifer could scratch herself and itch herself while she's waiting on her turn, and see if that would be effective as a positive reinforcement and improve conception rates that way as well.
Sandy, what was it like getting that brush built and used within the setting?
Well, of course, we come from we can do it ourselves background. So, I'm looking through my shop of, what do I have? Here's this push broom that's no longer functioning. Can I make something sturdy enough to withstand all these animals? And the reality was, it might work for a few. So we talked with Brett Lance at, as Nicholas mentioned, the Technology Development Institute, talked about our ideas, and they were able to buy some. If you look on the internet, there's lots of animal type brushes that you can buy. So they sourced some things, and we're able then to fabricate something for us that we could install in a variety of different types of alleyways, because they're not going to be all the same, adjustable height. And of course, that brush has got to have some give to it. And so they were very helpful in designing something that, would stand up to animal use and yet be adjustable. And so that's what we piloted this breeding season.
Sandy, Nicholas, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Glad to be here, and we'll be glad to hopefully have more results for you on this year's brush attempts next year.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
That was Assistant Professor in K-State's Animal Sciences and Industry, Nicholas Diaz, and he was joined by K-State Beef Reproduction Specialist, Sandy Johnson. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing drones and satellites in agriculture with K-State Precision Agriculture Specialist Deepak Joshi and K-State Beef Systems Specialist Jaymelynn Farney. Deepak, Jaymelynn, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Really glad to be here.
This conversation around drones and satellites in agriculture, something people will be able to hear more about at an upcoming event. But as we're wanting to touch on what you guys are both presenting on at this event, Deepak, your presentation titled Earth Observation and Satellite Data, Their Role in Precision Agriculture, and what is that?
Earth observation means any of the sensor data. You use a sensor to collect the information about your farm from the atmosphere, or using satellite or drone or any ground-based sensor. So it includes satellite data, it includes drone data, and also include different sensor data that study about your soil, study about your crop. It can help to detect the stress, also help to monitor crop growth and any diseases in your farm. So it can be used for various decision-making purposes in your farm.
How have you seen the amount of data that's being collected change in the past years?
There are so many data already collected. For example, satellite data, they cover whole Earth, and they are freely available as well. And they have a different temporal resolution as well. So we can use those data, which are freely available as well. And we don't need to pay for those freely available data that can be used for a different purpose. Like satellite data, they are freely available. Like Landsat is a one satellite platform. It provides freely available data. Sentinel is another satellite, provides freely available data. And there are some commercial satellite as well, like Planetoscope. They also provide very high resolution data that is good for our on-farm studies. And there are some other data as well, like SAR, which is radar-based data that is used for mostly, especially on the soil moisture studies. We can determine soil moisture and plant biomass from there. And there are some other satellite data like LiDAR that are usually we can use to study about our farm topographic variability or spatial variability of our farm.
How is a satellite able to tell what the soil moisture is?
Yeah, as I mentioned, like satellite, there are different satellite as well. Like you can use like satellite image that is collected before planting. You can use those satellite images that were collected before planting to study about soil moisture, soil nutrient content, or any mineral content. So we can calculate some soil index called soil index, like similar to the NDVIs. So we can use those soil index to study about the soil moisture, soil nutrient content as well. And also we can use similarly, we can fly the drone before planting when soil is bare, and we can get the information about our soil moisture content as well.
Where is this at in the process of being more research focused versus farmers and ranchers being able to integrate it into their operations?
Mostly these have been used by the researcher for their studies, but now we need to bring that research to our farm. So we're trying to combine all these data into some decision-making tool using AI model. And I've been working on some yield prediction using satellite data, and also trying to combine other like LiDAR data as well, and also topographic data as well, and SAR data as well, and how we can combine using AI model, and that AI then at the end will make the decision tool that farmer can use that for different purposes like yield prediction or disease prediction or any stress prediction.
Do you expect that at some point this technology will be integrated more into the operations?
Yeah, definitely. There are some technology already exists as well. There are some commercial platform that already exists as well. So we are trying to build here our own as well. So I've been working on a couple of the on-farm studies here in Kansas with some of the grower. I've been collecting drone images throughout the growing season, and also combining with some freely available satellite information as well to make this happen.
And Deepak, your conversation focused more on crops, but Jaymelynn focused a little bit more on the livestock side of things. Your presentation titled Pastureland Biomass Estimation Using Drone, and what is that?
So luckily, the title exactly tells us what we're going to do. There is some really cool research that's been going on around where we can reduce the amount of labor to be able to correctly monitor the amount of grass that's out there for our cattle. So that's what biomass is. It's just how much is out there for them to eat. You know, our typical method is you physically walk out, put a 1 foot by 1 foot or 2 foot by 2 foot square out in the pasture, get down on your hands and knees, clip it with a pair of scissors, weigh it, dry it, whatnot. And, you know, a lot of folks have been utilizing the drones to fly across there. You put out some markers, and they've developed algorithms, etc., that will correlate what we've hand clipped into what is the biomass for the animals.
How accurate have you seen this be?
And so we have tested it on 2 different types of forages in the Southeast Research Center that I've been directly involved with, looking at fescue pastures, Bermuda grass pastures, and we find that they are greater than 88% accurate to what we get for our hand clipping. So that provides a really good option for that. There's been some, previous work done on the tall grass native range here in Kansas where they see about the same value. So it's not perfect, but when you think about your physical savings of going out and clipping it and being able to use the drone, you can capture more real time, be able to monitor across time. Whereas when we clip, we may go out once or twice a year. The drone just helps expedite that process.
For example, then, would someone be able to go out into a pasture and be able to see, are they eating it as fast as I thought they would be?
Yes, that's exactly where we're hoping to get. Right now, we're still in the research, not 100% applicable to the producers. Even though there are some companies out there who have been working on their algorithms and trying to offer this as a service-based process for them, that is something that they're working on. Now, with biomass, as with any biologic system, we have to have good algorithms that are specific for your type of pasture. Fescue does not grow the same as bluestem. And so we really have to, when you're working on it, it takes a little bit of extra steps to be able to make that correct correlation to be accurate.
What's the dream for it going forward?
So the dream would be that we could, everybody across the United States who does some of these pasture clippings could incorporate some autogenous type of measurements, whether it's use of a drone, or I've been working with some folks out of Missouri that are using like ultrasonic waves that you attach an ultrasonic device to the front of your UTV. And as you drive through the pasture, it bounces back the height of the grass, and that correlates back into biomass. Just any way that we can track it is our goal, because you can't make improvements or correct management decisions if you don't have the data. You know, there's multiple other options that drones can be used for, but, you know, just for this biomass perspective, that's good. They're a little more advanced for some other components. Like, they're already using drones that you can fly it out over your pasture, capture images or video, and be able to upload it into some software online, and AI will count the number of animals you have. That they can actually be using that to help with keeping track of your animals. They're putting thermal images on there and are working on correlating thermal images to animal health so you can help detect sick animals. Australia, they use the drones to actually herd cattle from pasture to pasture. So there is just so many options that are out there. I mean, the sky's the limit. Just whatever you think you can do. Try and work with the engineers who understand it a little better to be able to incorporate those into your management practices.
If people would like to hear more about either of these topics, Deepak, when can they do that?
So our event will happen on August 7. It's at the Tistel Methodist Church in the Winfield, Kansas. So we have advertised this event through the Agronomy e-update as well a few weeks ago. And if you want more detail about the event, you can contact our Extension County agent, Jeff Saylor, as well. His phone number is 316-660-0153. So the registration deadline is August 1, and please feel free to register. So we are very excited to have this event.
Is there any cost for this event?
No, this is a free of cost, and also lunch is provided. So this is completely free of cost and with the lunch provided.
Deepak, Jaymelynn, I appreciate you both taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you for the invite.
That was K-State Precision Agriculture Specialist Deepak Joshi, and he was joined by K-State Beef System Specialist Jaymelynn Farney. You can hear more about drones and satellites in agriculture at the upcoming event taking place in Winfield on Thursday, August 7th from 9 to 11:30. It is free, but you do need to RSVP by August 1st. I will put links in today's show notes on agtoday.net where you can get registered and find more information. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. If you love growing your own salad fixings, planting cole crops in mid-August to early September can extend the harvest into fall. K-State instructor and horticulture extension specialist Cynthia Domenghini offers some tips today for establishing a salad garden. Cynthia, we're still in summer, but starting to think ahead towards fall, and as part of that, we're also thinking about what can we do in the garden or sometimes even outside the garden.
Exactly. Yes, it's a great time to start planning that fall garden. And depending on what part of the state you're in, that's going to help predict what you could be planting or preparing to plant. So this is a great time if you don't already know when your first frost date is. You want to make sure you know that information. And then from there, you can look at some of the typical fall crops, such as spinach and leafy greens, radishes, carrots, a lot of those cole crops. When you look at the seed packet and you see how many days to harvest, that can help you backtrack from your first frost date and decide if you're going to have time to put a crop such as that in the ground in your area.
And a lot of these salad fixins really don't take a lot of space either.
Exactly, yes. Again, on the seed packet, you'll see spacing requirements, and it's a nice crop to get in the ground with a relatively quick turnaround time. And like you said, you can space them a little bit closer together. than some of these larger summer crops like zucchini and tomatoes.
One of the things I saw that you had written was that you could actually just do some of this in a bag of potting soil.
Exactly. This is something I experimented with a few years ago. An idea for someone who maybe only has patio space, maybe their summer garden is still going really well, or maybe they're concerned about germinating seeds when the temperature is still pretty warm outside. So you can take a traditional bag of potting soil, lay it flat on the ground, and slice open the plastic bag, exposing the soil, and then you can plant directly in that potting soil bag. And the nice thing about that project is if you plant the seeds in the bag on some firm surface like a pallet or maybe a piece of plywood, something that you could move, maybe with someone to help lift the other side, you can actually keep it in a shaded area or an area that has a little bit more shade. While it's still so hot outside, you'll have better germination rates because you'll be able to moderate that soil temperature by moving the bag.
Probably a little bit easier to do the watering, too.
Exactly. Yep. You'll need to make sure that it's not drying out too quickly. Just as with any container type garden, the soil does tend to dry out a little bit more quickly. So you'll need to check it maybe daily, every other day, depending on the wind and sun exposure. And you can even elevate it so it makes it nice where you're not having to bend over and garden as well.
As we kind of make that transition from summer to fall, are there some other things that we should be doing in the garden itself?
Absolutely. This is a great time. If you're not wanting to plant a fall garden, this is a great time to consider a cover crop, which will contribute nutrients back into the soil and help build up that texture. It's also a great time to consider putting organic matter on top of your garden. I don't recommend tilling the garden deeply this time of year because it will expose the soil to the heat and it'll cause it to dry out and break down that soil. But laying organic matter, such as manure, on top of the soil can be done this time of year. And I especially want to point that out for parts of the state where they're having water restrictions right now due to the drought. You might not want to plant a fall garden since you're limited on how much water you can apply. And germinating seeds, you're going to need some water. So there are other things you can do, like preparing your garden for the spring.
I also want to remind people to check out the horticulture newsletter because there is so much information in that.
Exactly, yes. In the newsletter we are putting together each week, there is a calendar for what you can be planting and doing in the garden. And that is a really great resource for gardeners across the state. Another resource that I want to point out is the Kansas Garden Guide. And that is available online, free, and you can download it there. And it is just a wealth of information for all different topics of gardening. And it even has pages specific to certain vegetable crops. So that's another one to check out, the Kansas Garden Guide.
That's Cynthia Domenghini, a K-State instructor and horticulture extension specialist with information on growing a salad garden this fall. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.